Welcome back. In an effort to drive down the cost of running his government, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has suspended the purchase of new state cars as authorities search for over 200 vehicles said to have gone missing under the previous regime. However, critics say the recent naming of 110 ministers contradicts his campaign. The new government says it has inherited a budget deficit closer to double digits.
Ghana's new government is facing public scrutiny after a plan to cut down on spending has revealed that, in fact, 200 vehicles had gone missing from the president's office. President Nana Akufo-Addo, who came into power last year, has suspended purchase of any new government vehicles after authorities stated that they are trying to track down cars that were never returned by officials in the previous government. The new president, who promised to fix the economy and fight corruption, is facing criticism in the meantime for an elephant-sized team of 110 ministers and deputies, despite a campaign promise to cut government waste. Just a few years ago, Ghana's economy was one of Africa's most dynamic, but it was hit hard starting in 2014 by a slump in global prices for its gold and oil exports. A fiscal crisis saw inflation and the deficit rise sharply and the currency fall, forcing the previous government to enter the IMF program.
Even though I did not know the length of the suspension, because they did not tell us that we were suspending it for 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 years, or 5 years. But I was still impressed because it sent a signal that the government was not about to spend so much of our resources on the luxuries of its appointees and so on. Only to learn just this morning that, as a matter of fact, before the order was given, several of the new ministers and departments had already ordered very expensive vehicles. So what is the purpose of this order? If the vehicles have already been bought and so on, what is the purpose? I'm totally lost.
Akufo-Addo was elected on a promise to create jobs, fight poverty, promote development and boost free market growth through cutting taxes and red tape. The new government says it has inherited a budget deficit closer to double digits than the 5% targeted for 2016 by the previous government.
You said we should not order, and yet you have so many ministers. It is not safe for us. So for me, I'm not happy. I'm not happy at all. It's not the right thing to do.
I mean, throughout our history, no government, I'm talking about the history all the way from the colonial period till now, a history which spans almost 200 years. No government has had the courage to employ or appoint 110 ministers.
Top government appointees in Ghana receive monthly salaries equivalent to around $4,000, in addition to at least 2 cars, free fuel, a house, free utilities and personal protection.
Now back here in Nigeria, the tanker drivers arm of the Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, have embarked on an industrial action with effect from today. However, the Nigerian National Petroleum has convened a meeting to thrash out the issues listed by the union. The union at the weekend announced that its members will withdraw their services, raising concerns that Nigerians may experience another round of fuel supply crisis. Our energy correspondent gathered that no lifting of fuel has taken place at the depot so far today. Already, residents of the Federal Capital Territory are reportedly beginning to feel the impact of the strike, as queues are said to be building at some petrol stations. Well, joining us to discuss this issue is Channels Television energy correspondent Olu Phillips. Thanks for joining us on the program, Olu.
Thank you, Bisi.
I'm sure this is the last thing that Nigerians want to hear at this time, and another imminent fuel crisis owing to this strike. But first, before we go on, what about the meeting that has been convened by the NNPC to thrash out some of the issues listed by the union? With this meeting, are we likely to hear that the strike is over?
I like meetings. I like meetings. Meetings are meant to be conversational. Meetings are meant to be a dialogue point. I'm across table where solutions can be bettered for issues. I like meetings, but meetings that are not necessary, for me, is a waste of time. The truth is that meeting is not started yet. And if it ends very late today, by tomorrow morning, you may have to call private services of taxis to get to work because it may start to bite in Lagos. I can also tell you authoritatively that there has not been any lifting. If you do consider that our daily consumption is about 30 million liters a day, with about 70% of that supply coming from Lagos depots, and none of the depots are lifting, meaning the tankers will be, first of all, they'll be lying down on the streets of Lagos. They don't have parks. They'll be stretching out. They won't go in. It takes an average of about 30 minutes to load one if you don't have a speedy gantry system. I think we have just about one of the depot or two out of the many 20-something depots that have that speed and capacity to do like 20, 25 trucks at the same time or simultaneously. Most of those depots can only do like 2, 3. And you know the trucks are not SUVs, they are not sedan cars, they are trucks. So if you look at what the feedback of that will be and the ripple effect of when eventually, even if they call off the strike, you will now start struggling to be able to bridge that gap of delay. Once there is a shock in the system of supply, we are going to go back to the trenches. And it's becoming like, it's sounding like a broken record. We are bigger than this. Why can't issues be resolved except people speak the language of, it's not even a carrot on the stick.
Exactly. I was just going to ask you that. I mean, in as much as you just, I'm sure many Nigerians are heartbroken with what you just said now. But let's look at the issues. It appeared that we had moved past the era of strikes by, gas workers. But what are the issues again this time? Are they the same issues that have been raised over time, or are there fresh issues, fresh concerns from the union?
There's a popular religious saying, a quotation that says, "Nothing is new under this earth." And that is instructive. There's nothing that is happening in terms of the demands that are new. The demands have always been there. One has always been failure of one party in the bargain not to meet their own obligations. In this time around, the federal government, there's what you call the CBA, Collective Bargaining Agreement, which is always entered with agencies and government, especially in the oil sector, for instance. NUPENG has entered, tanker drivers arm of NUPENG entered that agreement with NATO and by extension the federal government. Now, that is supposed to be reviewed every 3 years. 3 years has elapsed, that review has not been done. Part of that review is how the welfare of the tanker drivers will be addressed. Remember, the federal government does not own one tank or one driver. These are private entities that have breached the gap of the inadequacies and ineptness of government in this regard. This is our earnings for now. This is a strong area of earnings. So this bargain is one of them. They have also talked about constant harassment by members of the NSCDC, Nigeria Civil Defense Corps. There's a clip that you put on the tank to avoid adulteration while they travel. Now, all we understand is that these guys accost them on the way, try to get them to open this thing and adulterate and all of that. So they also have that. And
Oluwa, I'm sure that we could go on and on
absolutely
with these issues, but of course, one thing that Nigerians want to know or to see is an end to the strike.
In talking about it, yes, go ahead.
We just have to wrap up the program.
That's fine.
Well, thank you so much for watching. That's the program today. I am BC Adebayo.